Hello, welcome to this installment of Yoga Philosophy. Today I'm reading from the Agora 2 book. It's called Kundalini. I don't know if you can see that clearly. By Robert Svoboda. It's a very good book. Helps dispel a lot of doubts and things. So let me preface with why I'm doing this particular installment. I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade, but I like the tenets of Buddhism where it was the original Buddha taught debate to his monks and set down rules and things. You can't bully people, but you can properly debate. Is this true? Is it real? Where's your source? Where is it from? Yada, yada, yada. Just saying, oh, well, I read it in a book, it must be true. Now, with that said, I do believe in using people who seem to have some sort of credibility or experience and who you relatively trust to an extent. I think it's good to use these resources to help back up what you say. Because when we don't do that, when we don't properly cite sources, or at least give some reference to that, I'm either making this up or I've got this from somewhere. And I honestly think every time I got this from somewhere is most likely superior to I made this up, right? Sometimes we can make educated guesses, which is a lot of what I do. And honestly, philosophy is basically just one giant educated guess. But it's based on experience, and people have tread the path of this, trying to figure out who we are and why we're here. And others don't care at all, and that's fine. So this is kind of more for the individual who, I'm not saying you can't listen to it if you want. I don't care. I would rather you watch all my videos, no matter how pointless or not pointless you think they are. I'll at least try to be entertaining, even with this kind of stuff. And that's part of my mission, too, is I want to take things like book learning and everything and study, and then having conversations with people out to sort of see how much you've actually retained and how much do you really know, and does it even, is a simple argument dismiss all the things that you have come up with? Is it built on a weak foundation of metaphorical sand? Or is it built on something sturdy and something you can rely on? Does it stand up to debate and argument? Of course, you don't have to argue like crazy. You can have disagreements with people and have discussion without going overboard. It's totally possible. And I encourage this sort of thing. In fact, I have a good relationship with somebody out of the country who is into the same sort of stuff that I am. And we have a discussion about, is this true? Is it not true? Is it real? Is it real? Back it up. Like, let's go check a couple sources and see what comes about. And then let's go back and forth and tell me about your experience. I'll tell you about my experience. And I honestly feel I'm really into this. It's like, how can we get more comprehensive? How can we get really to the bottom of some of these things? Because there's a lot of stuff on the web where they're like, oh, it's this and that. Based on what? Based on what? Where's your reference? No reference. Well, I just thought this was how, we need to, there's so many people. If we're ever to get out of this mesh and get something good out of it, we need to develop more and more systems where we're communicating in groups more effectively. This is my personal sentiment based on experience. I just find there's a lot of gibberish on the internet. It's just a lot of stuff where you're just like, where did you come up with that? Like what? And you want everyone to take you super seriously, and you are asserting that you are 100% correct based on nothing, based on no references. I don't know about you and me, but I have a lot of experience with legal matters and being the client. It's just a whole different world. It opens your eyes to we need to, and scholars, actual college professors and things, and the way that they write textbooks and the way that they write papers. It's very different than the way that a lot of the things that we see or read on the internet are just sort of like pseudo gibberish fact. We just don't know. And I would like to contribute to clarifying a bit. So anyways, I have a tendency of getting a little off topic. I'll get back on topic. Now, I just wanted to talk about today this concept of the third eye, the chakras, Specifically the concept of, and please don't take offense to this, I'm just trying to get deeper. Have you opened your third eye? I must have opened my third eye. I just would like to examine this in a little bit more detail. And I have talked about it before in other videos. I believe it was in the Om Dram or the Om Shri Krishna Prem mantra demos, and the mantra demo videos that are on this channel as well. And I've talked about it in the 4-part video, download, the term download. I'm getting a download. If your third eye was actually open, and I don't believe that the physical seam of your forehead bursts open and the third eye pops out like in the drawings. I think those drawings, as well as the drawings of the gods and everything, aren't necessarily exactly how they appear, but it's sort of like a way to help us understand something that's hard to understand. So, imagine inside of your head that opening. I don't know, maybe your skin bursts open and a real third eye comes out, but I doubt it. I've never heard of anything in any book about any yogic tradition of any of these great gurus and masters that most of them are not living anymore. And I haven't seen any modern ones that compare with a lot of these older ones, which is why I referenced some older things. And my teacher was, he was mainly active in the 60s and 70s, so that was a long time ago. These guys were these, what I would call the spiritual giants, a very small group of men from India that came to the West, starting in the 1920s approximately. Maybe it was a little earlier for Vivekananda, and then I believe Yogananda came second. These are the two real spiritual giants. I mean, I'm talking about big players, not amateurs. On par with Neem Karoli Baba in India, Sambhari Baba, Sant Keshavadas, my teacher, Vimalananda from the Kundalini book, Robert Svoboda's teacher. And there's so many. Ramakrishna. What was the Advaita Vedanta guy? Ramana Maharishi. Okay. Swami Rama. Absolutely Swami Rama. There's many others. But a lot of these men, you'll notice, I think they were mostly prominent between just before the 1920s and then into the 1980s at the latest. And then, where did they all go? We've got like a couple really famous ones, and I'm sure there's plenty of people in India and of the Muslim faith, fakirs, and all these different groups and sects in the Middle Eastern part of the world that are still legitimately practicing and are advanced spiritual practitioners, especially the fabled and the rumored sadhus who live in the mountains of Girnar and the mountains, the different Himalayan mountain regions, who, you may never come into contact with them. They come into contact supposedly with very few people. I truly believe that there are some real amazing people out there, in the justice of it. I just don't believe that in the West or in any of the modern countries, and even probably the most of India or other countries, people are so materially driven at this point that they're not putting in the requisite time, nor do they even know what the practices are in the first place. Because a lot of this stuff was orally transmitted throughout generations, and not all of it is put into books. So this is actually part of my mission with the book search. It's very exhaustive because it's very difficult to find stuff that's actually really useful and practical in your life. A lot of it is just philosophical, metaphysical. I was going to say a word, but I'm going to leave it out. Paramasturbatory. I don't know if I said that right. Intellectual stuff. So you're intellectually. It doesn't mean anything. It's not real knowledge unless you're able to apply it somehow. So that's the whole trick with this process, is turning philosophy into something useful in reality. And I know others have succeeded, but I think that it requires a certain kind of thing. So with that said, if the third eye was to open, what would that look like? I've made this argument and I need to back it up more, but I'm thinking that you are going to have some very stupendous abilities. You're going to do stuff that nobody else that you know can do. like actual telepathy. Like you can read other people's thoughts, and it's real. You're not making it up, and you're not schizophrenic or whatever condition people would blame you of being a little bit off, where you're making stuff up, and you think it's real, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actual ability to do things that are unordinary. The stories in the Bible of Jesus manifesting fish from the water, he made them appear. You know, they go, oh, it's a miracle. Well, in the Indian tradition, they would call it a siddhi, or a power. Call it a miracle if you want. It's definitely something stupendous that the normal average person, even back then, can't do. And all this time that we've progressed up at this point, people still can't do stuff like that. So we are not Marvel comic superheroes. It's great to pretend, but it's important to be realistic too. And if we ever do get there someday, that would be really cool. But I'm not seeing it. So this goes always back to that in this most recent video I made, Viveka, or discrimination, the ability to see BS from the truth, the ability to know that that's a lie, that's not real, that's not valid. And this over here is true, it's valid, it's correct. And obviously this is not easy to do. But I do believe that it can be done with everything, and our individual ability to do it just based on how much did we train and study, you know, like I'm going to school for it. Did I do my homework? Did I practice things that would help lead me to that state? Because if you want your third eye to open and you're not actually doing the practices that have been prescribed throughout generations and have still survived to some extent in our modern world, and if you really are motivated, you could figure it out. But you have to experiment a lot. How many people are doing that? Most people are just on the group posting. They're like, well, probably shouldn't show the inside of the book for copyright stuff, just keep to the outside. So they're like posting, na 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 na, and this spiritual concept means this, and for all you meditators out there, have you ever opened your third eye? Blah 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 blah. That is fantastic that you are curious and that you want to know, but are you really going to get an answer? I have read a lot of the answers that come with that, and I'm telling you, it is disappointing from somebody who's studied so hard for so long about specifically the yoga and Hindu philosophy, tradition, culture, and religion all combined. I grew up with it. I was initiated into it after I was baptized as a Lutheran when I was a baby. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, I was initiated into Bhakti Yoga, which is essentially, if you really just want to understand it, is basically Hinduism without the official title or certificate or official procedure that went along with it. He did do an initiation ceremony with me, but it was not the sacred thread. It was just a simple imparting of the Gayatri mantra. My mother, and then to me, received a gift of a rosary or a japa mala, which is made of rudraksha beads. It's a tree that is a seed, and it's kind of bumpy on the outside. It's associated with Lord Shiva and also with his spouse Parvati or Durga or Kali or whatever manifestation of that is. Uma. Anyways. Yeah, I know I would say I'm a little off topic, but I think, you know, in time I'll get really polished with these videos, but I just wanted to get content up, and I want to just have sort of in-depth ramblings on small topics so that without it being too boring, may or may not be of use to somebody who's on the path, and like me, maybe they've gotten a lot of surface stuff and they're just not satisfied, and then there's just only so much that you can read in a book. You have to take the book and you have to work with it, you have to reflect on it, you have to think about it. You have to think about, does this even apply to the modern world? And then you have to go through these different things. And then you have to ask yourself questions like, is this crap real? I have to say the word crap, but I like to take it loosely, even something I care about so much. Like, don't take it so seriously. Please, 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 please. Be serious in your manner, fine. But we as individuals, we don't have a lot of authority, you know. We're all doing our best, and we're all trying to help each other, hopefully. And that's what I'm trying to do. So with viveka, with discrimination, I have personally come to the, I hate to use this word, conclusion that when the average person says that they've opened their third eye, that they have not actually done it. Mind blowing, huh? I'm not telling you what you want to hear. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. In this world, everyone wants everything and is not willing to do anything. That's not good. I am Saturnian. I'm a little bit of a strict disciplinarian, but I'm also loving and kind and compassionate. And like the gurus of old, as stories will tell about, all gurus have this in common. They want what's best for you, kind of like a mother. And sometimes they've got to scold you. Sometimes they've got to set you on the right path. Maybe they got to dissolve your ego a little bit about something so that you can see clearly. And that helps you. Because when we're in this state of delusion, speaking from experience, right here, I have thought that my third eye is open. I will not lie, multiple times. I'm pretty sure I was actually wrong. To be able to say that to myself I think this is a big deal. And I want to encourage people to do that. You don't have to go in the mirror and say, I'm wrong about this and I'm wrong about that. I mean, you can if you want. It might actually help your self-esteem and tone your ego down a little bit, which was just going to benefit you in your life. So, with that said, I would say, oh man, that was ridiculous. Look at that, I'm wasting time, 16 minutes into it. I apologize, world. So the third eye opening, possibly not real, okay? Here's actually a perfect example of the illustration of what that third eye opening through the flesh. But again, and that's, see, there's a masculine right here, intoxicated, see the eye. Feminine, sober, she's not screwed up. Arching eyebrow, intense, whatever, more graceful and smooth. Slightly different lips, different earrings. This is more of a feminine earring. This is the Rudraksha bead. This is the masculine. Since it is Shiva, that is his component. And see, he wears the Rudraksha beads and the snake and all that kind of stuff. There's different representations of them, but those are all pretty common ones. And see, even their hairstyle is done up a little bit differently. And Shiva here has the crescent moon in his forehead. He also has the Ganges River flowing through his locks. Yes. See, I know a lot about this stuff, but you gotta realize at a point that I believe that God is real, but I have a more neutral term. Oh Lord. And yeah, there's the specific different titles: Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma, and all the different gods and goddesses. With that said, there are two schools of thought, I guess. One is that people think they're real, and then others think that they're representations of God energy, and that's not actually what God looks like or who God is. It's just a way to help us understand something that we have a really hard time understanding. Is to fathom the Lord. Being human is very difficult because we are not God. Yeah, we may have been made in his image, but we ourselves are not the Lord. All right, anyways, I'm going to kind of wrap this up pretty quickly. Talking about not opening the third eye, I do believe it is possible to open a third eye. I just think that it takes a lot of effort, and you have to do things very specifically, and you have to follow things like the Tantra or different yogic practices that specify and that have actual activities that you need to be doing on a regular basis, and purify with the yamas and niyamas your behavior, purification of the body, the nose. All this stuff is actually super important. Being able to sit in a posture in meditation comfortably for hours at a time without slouching or without screwing up is actually supposedly very crucial. Pronouncing the mantras correctly, even though I also do believe that the God mantras are very safe. But the technical specific mantras that you would consider tantric magic are ones that, unless you are familiar and are going to do what they tell you to do, how to purify yourself with it, and who to pray to, you probably shouldn't be messing with it, because you're working with an energetic thing that we have a hard time. I have a hard time understanding this after all the 30 years. I'm like, yeah, I believe in it, but I can't see my nadis and I can't see my chakras. And like people are like, oh, well, I can see it. And I'm like, yeah, you're visualizing. That's what you're doing. You are either hallucinating or visualizing, and it's okay. Hallucinating is not a good thing because it's fun, but you're not seeing the truth. You're seeing a partial truth. You're seeing something that's kind of almost there, but you're not really there. And it's always been said it cannot be found that way. Do your research and homework. If you look in a lot of older things of masters and practitioners of yoga, most of them usually seem to agree, as far as what I remember from what I've read, lots of them. I would have lots of accounts that I will provide later. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. You've either got it, you've attained it, or you haven't. So, yeah, there are levels. But there's usually one real good distinction where you would know. If you were able to do superhuman things, you would know. It wouldn't be a delusion. You would be able to produce it in reality. And if somebody asked you on command, you would be able to produce it on command. It's one or the other in this situation. So if you don't have it, you're working towards it, if that's what you want. Personally, I want union with God, a form of enlightenment where I'm really happy all the time. And I'm really, really good to other humans and the earth, and the way my brain functions and my actions and my speech are really purified. That's a good state to be in. That's a good goal. All that other stuff is kind of, they're impediments. And if you're doing that anyways, supposedly you're going to get those things anyways, naturally, automatically along the way, just for going for the highest goal and only sticking to that. The self, God, union with the self, with a capital S, the great self, the field of the self, which is in here in this book. One of the things in the glossary is referring to Adhidaivika, Adhidaivika, wow, I don't know if I pronounced that right, Adhidaivika, Adhidaivika, the celestial or astral sphere, the world of gods and goddesses beyond both the physical and the spiritual. The three chakras in the head called Golata, Lalata, Lalana are for the Adhidaivika. So what that's saying is that in this book it talks about in Kundalini, in the Tantra tradition, there is more than 7 chakras. Right? So there's also, and there's even more, but let's just keep it simple. There's 3 additional ones. So you have all the 7 chakras, right? The 7th chakra, the 6th is the third eye that we were talking about. The 7th is the crown chakra, but it's actually, I don't know if you can see it, it's like higher up, right? It's above your head a little bit. So it goes into the God realm. That's like sort of like our connection to the heavens. And the rest is the human body. And then before those, right? So the 7's up there, the 3rd's in here. What about in this region, right? So this is where they are, and supposedly like one of them's back further, because all the chakras go up the spine. So it's actually the back of your head is a lot of what's going on, not all the 3rd. The only real one in the front is the 3rd eye itself. It's actually the one that's not like the rest of them, the command center. And so these other ones are respectively, let's just say 1, 2, 3, and not necessarily in the front here. So those lead up to the very, very, very middle point of the head, right? And they connect to the crown. So those, sort of like what they're saying, and it's more complex than this, and he's referencing something he was talking about earlier in the book, but I don't want to get too technical because we got one other thing to talk about. These are like it's where the normal human, we're not allowed to operate there, essentially. It's sort of like the rules of the heavens, as far as I understand. We don't just get to do whatever we want. There's actually a system. There's actually rules, all right? So with that said, when we say we're doing these things, I mean, a lot of the time, I'm sorry, it is either delusion or hallucination. And once you recognize that, you actually are, I think you're able to progress more now because you're cutting out some of the stuff that's holding you back, some of this ego stuff where we think we're really, really great, but we're not actually there yet. So in order to get there, we need to drop that, and then we can progress to those higher realms, so to speak. And you actually need to be doing the practices, as far as I know, unless the only caveat, I think I used the right word there, is the grace of God. Now, to earn the grace of God is not super easy. Everything I ever read about other people's experiences in this, great saints of the Bhakta tradition, not necessarily super easy. All right. Anyways, I was distracted by that. The point is that if you actually activated those chakras, you would be doing some wild stuff and people would notice. You'd become a celebrity overnight. So unless you're doing that, you're not there yet. So keep studying, keep working, and realize that we actually do have some limitations. And if you do your own research and study a lot of different stuff, because I know I'm just saying this, but I'm telling you, there are rules to this whole cosmic metaphysical thing that we don't fully understand, and religion and everything is connected. Doesn't matter which one, whether it's Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Allah, it's all sort of the same format, right? Just different languages, different cultures, same thing, and same goal. So these higher realms are not for us. You've got to be really advanced. You have to purify yourself so much to be essentially eligible for that, and physically capable of handling these higher energies. They'll blow your freaking circuits. You're literally, there's potential risks of your entire nervous system failing. It's like an overload of electricity. Like if you stuck a really high wattage appliance and it didn't have the right breaker, it's like one of the really small breakers. That's the analogy that I think is easiest to understand of what would happen to you if you were just like, I'm ready. This is the ego. No, you've got to prepare. So with that said, be diligent, If you want to do the practices and do the chakras, then work with each of them one at a time. Find out what the bija mantras are, such as Lam, Vam, Ram, Yam, Ham, Om. Silence for the crown. And those other three chakras, I don't know what the mantras are. Actually, I think they're listed somewhere, but I've never practiced them because I'm not super schooled in tantra. This is the only really good tantra book that I have, and I practice something a little bit different, but it's not so different. It's just not exactly my tradition. However, I like pulling from multiple sources. I think it's really important. If you want to get to the truth, you need to find several traditions that do the same thing and get results and say hey, wait a minute. There's something to that then. And it gives it more credibility. In network marketing, they would call that third-party credibility. It's so weird, but that third source just seems to make it sound so accurate. I was going to make a comment about the CDC, but I was going to say, you know what? They can do whatever they want to do, and they have authority, right? Tell us whatever they want. It's truth. Is it now? Is it? Okay. Here's some data and here's some graphs. Here's an expert, and there you go. Enough jokes for now. I didn't accuse anything. So I like to make little jokes, but I understand the whole, you have to be careful about accusing and everything. All right, so, that Rishi, literally seer. Anything a Rishi sees or perceives becomes reality. Because a Rishi is an ethereal being of the highest class. One who is almost totally unlimited, who can travel anywhere in the cosmos and do anything at all. The rishis saw the hymns of the Vedas, from which all the knowledge of ancient India was derived. Okay. These beings actually live in those spheres we're talking about. Those chakras, those higher ones, connect you with those realms of existence, what we would say heaven, or the realm of the angels, and all these different things. And in Indian tradition, they're called lokas, or spheres. Actually, the shape of a sphere, supposedly. I guess it's got to be some sort of shape, but it's just a blob. Who would think of, do we think about that stuff like that? Yeah, what would it look like? A sphere, somewhere in space that we can't physically perceive with our normal human eyes, but supposedly exists. Who knows? That's the problem. All right, a rishi, you'll never meet a rishi. And they say that in this book, and I've talked about this. You'll never meet a rishi. Are you kidding me? If rishis are real, number one, they are so different from human beings. It's unbelievable. There's no possible way that a single human on Earth right now is a rishi, unless maybe they're hiding up in the Himalayas somewhere, hanging out with some sadhus. I don't know. I mean, supposedly they have come down, but this modern world's pretty gnarly. I don't think they care all that much, in that kind of way. You say like, oh, it's their duty, it's their job. Is it? Supposedly, this whole thing's a script of the rishis. This whole existence is like a play, a lila, and they're the manuscript writers. Even the gods aren't on that level because they have experience. They have experienced every womb, every birth. So they know the misery of mankind. So they do have compassion and they do help. But if you think that they think exactly like we do, like, oh, why aren't they like feel guilty about it or whatever? Just think that however we think or our limited emotions and everything, just think that they're probably beyond all that. They're not even worried about stuff like that. It doesn't even faze them. So they do what they do out of compassion and everything, but their mindset's going to be in a totally different sphere. And their experience, supposedly, okay, preface, of time is more cosmic than ours. It's more like, let's just say a day or a year for us. Sorry, I had to think of, I don't want to say things that aren't actually accurate of what I've read, but this is the time of the gods, all right? This is in stuff. If you look it up, you'll find it. It's an ancient cosmic Hindu view of how time actually works and how it works for the gods. And rishis are up there. So the 1 year for us would be 1 day for that being. They measure their time by the sun. It's more drawn out, slower. We measure our time by Earth revolving around the sun. They measure the time by sun revolving around the unknown object, which conspiracy people, and I don't know if they're right, but supposedly there might be a dwarf binary star that our sun circles around. And it's a part of a bigger orbit that we just can't see because we maybe don't have sophisticated enough equipment yet to see it, but it may exist. So there's this binary star, right? So they measure their time by that, and then there's a center to that. So we think that we're the center, right? Or that the sun's the center. But what if there's a center that those two things revolve around? We don't fully understand how all this works. So this is actually part of the cosmology. I'm not making this part up. And there's different theories and there's different schools of thought. But this one makes some sense to me. And even Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda, Paramahansa, Yogananda's teacher, let's just say for the sake of Western honors, Paramahansa Yogananda, famous old yoga teacher that came to the United States. His teacher was Sri Yukteswar, and he was the Lion of Bengal was his nickname. He was a famous guru in India. He never came to the West. But he wrote a book called The Holy Science. And in that book, he talked about the Earth, how it rotates around the sun, but also how our sun rotates around the dwarf star, right? And then how essentially Brahma, the god of creation, sits in the center of this. And as the Earth, hopefully I'm getting this right. This is from the book The Yugas, which are David Steinbeck and Joseph Selby. It's called The Yugas, and it's about the Hindu cosmological view of time, cycles of existence, the yugas, the ages, all that kind of stuff. So it's revolving around, and so when the Earth and our sun it's either when it gets really close to the dwarf star, we get really weird, or no, sorry, when we get really close to that center that we're revolving around, which is a very long distance, 25,000 years, I think it takes to do this full orbit. And we're like affected in a positive way. We become more good. We become better humans, and more evolved, or more aware of God's existence, like we really get it, and we can do things that we think are wild and crazy and magical, but we can't do them right now. And that's again the point. Maybe we remember an ancient memory where we could do these things, and we can't do them anymore. We're not doing them, all right? So it's important to get it. We're like, oh, we're not there right now. That's okay. That's okay. Let's just keep trying to serve and remember God, serve humanity. Let's just do our best. Let's fulfill our karmas and move on. And then when it goes farther away from this center of the universe, the true center of the universe, we become more wicked. That's it. It means we become more ignorant of God, of our true nature and God's true nature, and the whole relationship, where we really come from. So all that's going on. And these are all things that, again, I would like to assert that's where men cannot go. And I did read a thing in here, and I don't know if I'll be able to find it, but I'll try to. I'm getting very close to the end of the video, I promise. And when I say that, I actually mean that this time. I've heard other people doing videos say that. And then they'll go on for like another 2 hours. I'm not going to do that. I'm literally going to end in a couple minutes. All right, so I just keep watching, because I was so roped on it. That's what's fun about this. When I think sometimes people just want to hear people talk or the personality. I'm happy to do that, And if somebody doesn't want to watch it, they're just not going to watch the whole thing. That's totally fine. I'm not worried about it. But that doesn't mean we can't, express ourselves and put things out there. That's how I feel. I want to encourage other people to do it. And I'm not going to watch every video. I just don't have time. But I love YouTube. I love watching all kinds of random stuff. It's fantastic. Not everything of this world is bad. It's just the way that we use it. How are we using it? Are we hurting people? I'm not going to talk about this. This is very bad. There are parts of Tantra that are very dark, and I would never recommend going there. Dark magic. I don't know if it's actually real. I mean, that's the problem with some of these things, all this study and everything, and I've never really seen anything too wild. I'm like, is it even real? But it might be. So I always keep an open mind, because it might be. And we might be experiencing some of that with this weird stuff we're going on with the COVID pandemic and all the weird political stuff and the violence and the human trafficking and all these just crazy things that we never really knew existed. They're just kind of, we're like, and then some natural disasters, some really nasty weather in different places. Just scaring the crap out of us poor humans. We don't know how to handle this. When is the Mother Earth going to settle down a little bit? I don't know. There are so many good things in that. I strangely love to read glossaries, especially of these yoga or Hindu-based things, because you can learn a lot. The terms really help you, so that when you're reading, you're not so confused. You don't want to be looking a word up every time. You want to get a good, and I have a lot of experience, so I kind of almost do this as not just a hobby, but because I'm doing a lot of things professionally as a business, I really want to know a lot of these things thoroughly, so that when I'm asked, etc., and so that when I do videos, it's not just total garbage. I am trying a little bit. So I'm very familiar with the terminology that goes along with it, at least the English transliterations. Like for example, you're going to see Homa. So originally Homa probably would be something in, all right, actually, let me use this, even more specific to the tradition. Isha means Lord. I like to do prayers to the Lord instead of calling it different names, because people get me thrown off by all the different strange Hindu names. But Lord, everyone understands Lord. It's universal religion. Isha, Lord. And Isha means the indwelling Lord, by the way. So more specifically. But, Isha would be a Sanskrit script and be like, some squiggle lines here. And then the transliteration into sort of like a Hindu/English. Hard to explain that, but hopefully you'll understand. So you see Isha, Isha. That's like not a normal English word, right? But it's a hybridized word. There you go. It's a hybrid. And then you have Lord, which is our actual English translation. So there's 1, 2, 3. Devanagiri, or I can't even remember. Devana something Giri is a very butchered and oh my God, I feel like an idiot. That's this is why I study these glossary terms, because I really want to be able to, Jnana, that's a hard one. Jnana means knowledge. Jnana is the path of wisdom, the path of knowledge, another yogic path, another branch. So anyways, there are so many things that I want to get into, but I suppose it's best to keep it simple. Kedara, Kaula, Kurma, Lila, what I was talking about, Leela is an important one. Because that was, so I said the rishis were the manuscript writers of the universe, the whole thing. We think that we are doing everything. It's all written. This is what is referred to as predestiny. The only thing that we supposedly, we have the power to, when things happen to us or we're in a situation, we have the power to make a decision in that moment. So we're not necessarily bound to do something like we're on some kind of robot autopilot, like we got no control. We do. We do. However, the situations and occurrences, we have no power over that. We think we do. We don't. That's super wild to me. I love it when people argue that with me, like who supposedly believe in Hindu tradition and spirituality. I don't think they've done enough study. That's all. No offense to anyone who's in that situation. I think if you want to come back, you really need to do that and then give me points. And I'll consent. I'll concede. But you're going to have to give me points and references. And because everything I'm saying, even though I'm not perfectly referencing, comes from references, multiple references. I promise you, I'm really not making anything up. See, that's the whole thing. Is like I can innovate and I can elaborate and I can get into things, but I really, all this stuff has already been written about or talked about or been transmitted through different traditions orally. Leela is the cosmic play, distinct from Krida. The divine play of rishis and deities, especially Krishna and Rama, the gods, is called Leela. Cosmic pastimes in which they are always in control. Ooh, isn't that interesting? The demons don't actually have the superiority. God is always in control. Includes over humans. That is something that many major religions, especially Christianity, believes, and I believe it is totally true. God is in total control. So even though you see a lot of cruelty in the world right now, that doesn't mean God doesn't have the ultimate control. God is compassionate and lets things play out. He lets us play our little games and learn our lessons the hard way. Because that's what a true father or mother will do. They don't always interfere with their children. Sometimes they let their children figure stuff out for themselves. We must think of ourselves like God's children. This is another concept that's not that new, I think, for anyone. What was I looking at that? Sorry, I'm just getting used to the video stuff, and it was hard. What I wanted to do is there was a word, and I'm just going to talk about it, that has to do with where humans are not allowed to go. So this is a reference in the glossary. What it's saying, and I guess it doesn't even matter what the actual word is, and I'll find it later because I don't want to waste too much. It's a place where humans do not belong, and this is these upper realms. We're not allowed there. We're not allowed to operate from there because that's like imagine it as sort of like a governor control system. Be like, you're not ready, you're going to misuse this because there's real power that comes with this, and you can affect a lot of people and do a lot of stuff to the planet. So no, if you have not totally purified yourself and you've not gotten rid of all your demonic and gnarly tendencies, habits, desires, you haven't purified yourself. You're just not only physically capable of handling those energies, you're not allowed. You're not allowed. It's like a government mandate, They're like, no, sorry. I mean, we want you to do whatever you want, but you just can't control yourself. So we're forcing you to do this, and you can come up with all kinds of reasons why you're mad about it and why you think that we're out of control and all this stuff. But really, you're the ones that did it to yourselves. I don't know what to tell you. Grow up. You need to behave better. So this is the analogy. And I think that as modern humans, we actually are not that far away from it. A lot of us, trying to control human behavior even if we are sort of under control with different laws and rules, it's really hard to control humans. So with that said, a quick prayer. Om Namo Namo. Om Namo Namo. Om Namo Namo. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Hari Om Hari Om. Goodbye for now, world. Until next time, the next philosophical installment. Stay tuned.